Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys coming by the channel and checking today's episode out. And guys, today we're gonna have a conversation on when you want to use a straight tail plastic worm versus a curly tail plastic worm. These are styles, they've been around forever, and there's certain applications where sometimes they work better than the others, so we're going to get into that in today's episode. And also, guys, quick reminder, if you guys want to order some worms or anything else, guys, I'll put my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of the video. If you guys can use and bookmark that link, that's a really good way to help out advanced bass fishing, because anytime you buy a pack of worms or something, we get a small percentage of that commission on whatever profit they make there. So that's a good way to help out. And also, guys, real quick, I'd like to remind everybody, we do have this new color of my Blaukat Throwback jig up. It's black with blue tinsel. You can get this at the Cumberland Pro Lures website right now. I'll put that link in the description. Hopefully we'll have them in Tackle Warehouse soon, but this is my favorite jig color, guys. You'll love this thing right here. Okay, two different styles of worms. There's a lot of different variations in the curl tails. This is what's called like the ribbon tail, but some worms have more just like a straight curl tail on it. But regardless, they've got some type of curly tail that makes some type of action, versus a straight worm like this is the Zoom Magnum trick worm here. This is a straight tail plastic worm. This is actually how worms started out. Back when they first came out with plastic worms that I started using back in the 60s and 70s, they were all like the cream worms or the flip tails, which were straight, and they still work just as good today. So the question is, when do you want to use a curl tail? When do you want to use a straight tail? This is a complicated answer. I wish I could give you guys just like a clear cut, this is when you want to use it and when you don't want to use it. But one thing you're going to find out about it, it's like they work in both situations. If they're biting a plastic worm, a lot of times you can catch them on straight or curly tail. So there's a little bit of a it's not as simple as just saying under these conditions they're going to bite a curl tail, under these conditions they'll bite a straight tail. Ultimately, you have to just fish it to find out what the bass prefer. But here's one thing I can tell you about it from my experience. Bass that are a little bit more aggressive, in other words, bass that they have good feeding windows. In other words, like it's cloudy, maybe it's warm, it's really good conditions for fish to feed in, or a lake that doesn't have a ton of fishing pressure in it, or the bass, if they're a little bit more aggressive. Sometimes they prefer a little bit curly tail action, because a curly tail is a more aggressive action. The curl tail will, it displaces a little bit of water, puts out a little bit of vibration based upon the tail. So a tail like this, when it goes down, it's actually going to create some type of a subtle vibration that a straight tail doesn't. So in my opinion, from what I have seen about it, is if the fishing is good and the fish are biting and the fish are a little bit more aggressive, a lot of times they react to a curl tail better. Now, if the fishing is tough, let's say for example, a cold front rolls through, it's tough fishing, the place that you fish has a lot of fishing pressure on it, maybe the fish are really finicky, they're lethargic, they're not in an aggressive mood for whatever reason, that is when they like the straight tail. There's not as much action to it, it's a little bit more subtle, just seems to work a little bit better in those highly pressured areas. The other common denominator that I've noticed is that a curly tail worm will tend to work better in a little bit more off-colored water. So if you've got water visibility of say under 3 feet or so, a lot of times, since the curly tail does displace water and put out a little bit of vibration, it'll draw fish to a curly tail more than a straight tail. And on the other end of the spectrum, in clear water, like if you have water visibility of over 4 foot where the fish are really sight oriented, sometimes the straight tail worm is going to work better in those clear water situations. So in other words, here's the 3 things to remember. Number one, you got to experiment and you got to try both, because I can tell you certain situations that may or may not be working in, but ultimately, if you're getting a few bites on a plastic worm, try a straight tail, try a curly tail. Just go back and forth until you get a feel for what they want. And in correlation with that, in general, like I said, tough fishing conditions, clear water situations, the straight tail is going to produce better. A little bit more aggressive fish, not quite as heavy fishing pressure, a little bit more off-colored water, or those dark rainy days, you may get more bites with a curl tail worm. So anyway, I hope that helps you guys catch a few more fish with them, and we'll check in later.